Welcome to Brier's Music Showcase. I'm Bryer and welcome back to another video. Have you ever encountered this? You discover an album for the first time and you really enjoy it. But then later you come to realize that most people who are a fan of the band or artist really don't like this particular album. And that's what I'm going to be discussing today. Now I will admit, most of my opinions tend to follow the majority, but every so often I'll have a minority opinion. And in this video, I'm going to showcase 10 albums that I really enjoy, but most seem to not care for them. So if you have any albums that are part of this discussion, feel free to drop it in the comments below. And without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Brier's Music Showcase is brought to you by the people over at Patreon. Pledge today and get access to exclusive perks. Link in the description. So the first album I'm going to showcase is from Black Sabbath. And this album is kind of more polarizing than anything, because there are some people that do like this album, but the people who really don't like this album are very vocal. So I guess this kind of counts still. And the album is Born Again. Of course, the album cover does not help in its favor, but I kind of like the very disturbing yet hilariously bad album artwork. But I am a big fan of this album. People don't like this album because, Ian Gillan is on vocals here, and there's some people that don't think he fits. And they're kind of right, but as an Ian Gillan fan, it really does not bother me. I think he kills on this album. His vocals are just stellar. Some of his best vocals, in my opinion. And even some people say this is where he peaked. But there's some great songs that I like Trashed, Disturbing the Priest, Zero the Hero. Digital Bitch is kind of one of those songs where I can kind of see people saying that Ian was not the best choice, because that song is very non-Sabbath-like, but still. And also I love the title track. Again, one of my favorite Ian Gillan vocal performances is the title track. And Hotline's fun one, and Keep It Warm is pretty solid. The production, that's probably the other big factor with this one, but to me it doesn't really bug me. You're talking to the guy who listens to black metal, so bad production doesn't necessarily mean it's a red flag to me. But still, I like this album, and I know there's many people that do as well, but again, there's still some people who really aren't that into this one. And the next one I'm going to show is kind of in the similar vein. It's more ignored than anything, I guess, if that's a better word to describe it, because most people who are fans of this band don't really talk about it. And it's Blue Oyster Cult with Mirrors. So this is an interesting period of the band. They decided to go in a more polished direction, and some BOC fans just didn't think it was the right move. But again, I kind of like this very more melodic rock sort of approach, and I think the production is pretty good too. Miss Doctor Music, the Great Sun Gesture in the Vigil, I think that's how you say it. I Am the Storm are all really strong tracks, and I think again, it's not like heavy that we know Blue Oyster Cult as, but for a more not stripped back, but definitely a more polished, more clean sound to the band, I think they did an okay job, and I find myself really going back to this album quite often. After this, we have Kate Bush, and I'm a huge Kate Bush fan, so there might be bias as to why I tend to like this album. But I have seen some Kate Bush fans kind of knock this album down a peg, and that is The Red Shoes from '93. And most people seem to not care for this one, as it's probably her most quote-unquote normal album, because it's not as out there as like The Dreaming, for example. It's kind of slightly more conventional, and I don't know, I think Kate Bush does a good job with this sort of sound. Again, it's not as bombastic or as really pushing the boundaries type of music, but I think it's still like really nice listen. Rubber Band Girl is a good pop song. Eat the Music is kind of this weird kind of Madagascar themed track, but I kind of still like it. Moments of Pleasure is a great ballad. The title track is nice. Top of the City is really good too. And I also really enjoy the song Why Should I Love You, which is a collaboration she did with Prince. And I think it's actually a very fun song. And then you have a couple guests on here. You have Gary Brooker from Procol Harum and Eric Clapton on a couple songs. So I think it's a very nice album. I mean, again, it's not, I can see why people might not be totally into this one if you're a die-hard Kate Bush fan, but I'd say if you're a casual fan, I think you can still get behind this one. All right, we talked about Ian Gillan earlier, but let's talk about Deep Purple. And ironically, this album has no Ian Gillan. We have Come Taste the Band up next. So this is where you have David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes respectively on vocals and bass. You also don't have Ritchie Blackmore on here. You have Tommy Bolin taking up the guitar slot. And to many people, they just cannot accept Deep Purple without Ritchie. And, Ritchie is, he's Ritchie, and it's hard not to top him. But I think Tommy does a solid job on here. He's different, but I think it still slightly works. But you still have David and Glenn providing the vocals on here, and I still think it's very good. Definitely a bit more funky, and that's one of the reasons why Ritchie left. He didn't like the funky approach. But I don't know. I think they pulled it off really good. I think it's a very strong, underrated album. And this would kill the band for a number of years, but they would come back in the 80s with the Mark II. But this album does get ignored a lot. But I think it's, like I said, I think it's underrated for sure. Now, this is probably going to be my most controversial pick here, because pretty much everybody I come across online will gladly say this is the band's worst album. And I'm talking about Fleetwood Mac. And the album is Time. So, this is when you don't have Lindsey Buckingham or Stevie Nicks, but you still have Christine, and you still got John, you still got Mick on here, but you got a bunch of new guys. You have Billy Burnett, who was on the last album. Then you have Dave Mason, rest in peace. He's on here too. And then you have Becca Bramlett on vocals as well. And Rolling Stone magazine came out with the infamous article saying this was the best thing that happened to Fleetwood Mac. I wouldn't go that far, I will say that. But still, I think this is a bit overhated. Yeah, it has that 90s sort of cheese factor, which I guess is a big turnoff to some, but I like 90s cheese, so it doesn't really bug me. And I actually really do like Becca Bramlett's vocals on here, and some of the songs Dave Mason brought to the album I think were also pretty good songs here as well. And, Billy Burnett, he's there. I mean, he's not amazing, but I think it's tolerable. And then Christine's songs just go without saying. I still firmly believe she's never written a bad song during her time in Fleetwood Mac. I will say, though, I will agree on one thing. The last song, These Strange Times, yet easily the worst thing on this album. Yet it's just this weird Mick Fleetwood thing. I just think it's kind of a bit out of place for this. But again, I don't hate this album. I enjoy this album way more than Mr. Wonderful. It's not even close, but still, I still kind of dig it. I still dig Time. Then we have Genesis. We Can't Dance is up next. I could have gone with Invisible Touch too, because most people are more vocal on that one. But this one tends to get a bit more ignored to the prog snobs. And, you still have some pretty big songs on here. You have No Son of Mine, Jesus, He Knows Me, the title track. Tell Me Why I enjoy quite a bit. And you have ballads like Hold On My Heart, which is, again, I'm a sucker for ballads. So, again, I like that one. And I also like the song Since I Lost You, which is, I think, was a very nice song Phil wrote to Eric when Eric Clapton lost his son. I think that's a very good heart-wrencher. But you still got some longer tracks on here, like Driving the Last Spike and Fading Lights. This is the last album with Phil on lead vocals before he would officially leave. And I think it was a decent album for him to go out with. I think I still prefer Invisible Touch over this. But still, I think there's some good moments on here. And if you like 80s pop Genesis, then it's still on that line. And now we have a very big name. We have Paul McCartney, and I'm going with McCartney 2. So, McCartney, he's by himself yet again, and he decided to get really busy with the synthesizers. And you have this album. And you know, some people say, yeah, Paul went a little too far with the synthesizers because some of the songs are a bit bizarre. Probably the most notorious song on here is Temporary Secretary. And, you know, I get why people might not like that one because it is pretty strange and kind of nonsense if you really think about it. But I kind of don't mind it. I think it's a lot of fun. And that's really something I can describe this whole album. It's pretty fun once you get behind the more new wave synth pop direction here. You know, songs like Coming Up, which was a big single, on the Way, Waterfalls is nice, Summer Days song, One of These Days is a great closer. Though I will agree the album cover is probably not the greatest. Like, what kind of expression is that? But again, I don't think this is nearly as bad as people make it out to be, especially if you're a new wave synth pop fan. But very good. I think it's pretty good. Another underrated one, but again, I can kind of get why people may not be fully into that one. Okay, let's talk about some Rush up next, and I'm going to showcase Hold Your Fire from 1987. You know, 80s Rush, it's kind of a mixed bag to some. If you talk to an ordinary Rush fan, you would say, you know, they start off pretty good in the 80s, but then as they go along, they kind of go a bit too far with the keyboards. And this is kind of seen as the epitome of this. But I will say, I've always enjoyed this album. This is, I don't know if it'll be the top 10, maybe top 10. I have to think about that. I know I did a Rush ranking a couple years ago, but I completely forgot where I put this album. I don't even know if I would still agree with it still. I don't know. But I think some of the songs I still go back to on a regular basis. You know, Force 10's a good opening song, and I really enjoy Time Stands Still. That's a great single, and you have Amy Mann doing the backing vocals, which I think was very nice. Open Secrets is good. Second Nature I really enjoy. And one of my favorite songs on here is Prime Mover. I've always enjoyed Prime Mover. That's probably my first or second favorite song on the album. I mean, I will agree to some. I do think side 2 is not as strong as the first side, but, you know, Lock and Key is pretty solid. You know, High Water is decent. Turn the Page. And, you know, Tai Shen is kind of interesting, but yeah, but still, I think this is another pretty overhated album, or at the very least, an album that I think people don't give too much credit for. But anyway, we only have one more album showcase here, and that album is going to be The Who by Numbers. So this album has the unfortunate task to follow up Quadrophenia, and many people tend to ignore this one because of it. But again, like the Rush one, I think this is another underrated album from The Who. I still think there's some really good standout songs on here, like Slip Kid, However Much I Booze. Even Squeezebox, you know, it's a silly song, but I still think it's kind of catchy. Success Story, They Are All in Love. And then one of my favorite deep cuts on here is Blue, Red, and Gray. That's a good Pete Townsend song. And then How Many Friends is really good. And, you know, the closing song, In the Hand or Our Face, is pretty good too. But again, it's a pretty ignored album, but I think it's very underrated. I think more people should give it a bit more of a chance. Kind of examine it on its own merits. And you know, the history of this album kind of also plays a part because Pete Townsend was going through massive writer's block. And, you know, to some people, it might show. But I think Pete still did a fine job, despite what he was going through at the time. I think it kind of reflects it a little bit more. Well, here I am doing this while I'm editing the video. And I realized that I only had 9 CDs in front of me. So I don't know how I miscounted, but let me just fix it right now. So this is the 10th one for real this time. And the album is going to be Hot Space by Queen. Kind of a easy way to make me mention Queen in a video. But, you know, if you talk to a lot of Queen fans, many people would say this is by far the worst album from the band because they completely changed the sound from their more rocking sound to something completely dance-oriented. You know, this was mainly because Freddie and John were really getting big into this sort of sound. And I know Brian and Roger really were not keen on this direction. And a lot of fans tend to agree with them. But, again, I tend to like this album a lot more than most people. I mean, I understand why it gets hated on because it's pretty jarring if you really think about it. But I still think there's some good songs on here. You know, Staying Power, Dancer, you know, those are pretty good songs, although I will admit they do sound a lot better live, especially if you do watch it or listen to it on this live recording right here, which is pretty easy. I can just go ahead and grab it, but that's what I would recommend. Same with Action This Day. That's another example. But I don't think they did the Dancer. I think they only did Staying Power and Action This Day, if I'm not mistaken. But I also really enjoy Backchat. Many people seem to really don't like Backchat, but I've always loved it. Body Language. That's gonna be the song where I can't really argue with that one. Like, I totally get it. It's very, very, you know, weird if you're not into that, but I don't know. I kind of don't mind it as much, really. I already mentioned Actions Day, Put Out the Fire. It's kind of a nice rocker. Life is Real, Song for Lynn, and I think that's a really underrated song. Same thing can be said about Las Palabras de Amor. I also think that's a very underrated, kind of more ballady sort of song. Calling All Girls is okay. Cool Cat, which I actually quite dig because it has Freddie doing his falsetto, which he doesn't do too often, but still pretty cool. And this has the song that everybody loves, and that's Under Pressure. That's pretty much the only reason why some people will buy this, because it has that song. But besides that, again, I don't mind this one. I've always had a soft spot for this one. It's not in my top 10, I'll say that, but I still have a fun time when I'm in the right mood for it. Okay, let's finally conclude the video. There you go. Those are the 10 albums that I tend to like more than most people. So to kind of do like a brief recap, we have The Who by Numbers from The Who. You have Rush, Hold Your Fire. McCartney 2 by Paul McCartney. Genesis, We Can't Dance. Fleetwood Mac, Time. Deep Purple, Come Taste the Band. Kate Bush, The Red Shoes. Blue Oyster Cult, Mirrors. And then Black Sabbath, Born Again. Alright, so in the comments below, you can let me know how crazy I am to like these albums. Or again, if you have albums that also fall in this category, you can drop in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this type of video, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, go ahead and to the Patreon page if you want to support the channel. And I will see you in the next video. Take care and goodbye for now.